Now, quickly we move on to our next session on a very exciting and unique topic, decoding cybersecurity mesh, relevance for today's businesses. And to present this, I would like to call on stage with a big round of applause, Mr. Radhesh Walwadkar, Manager Systems Engineering from Fortinet. Can we have Radhesh with a big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen? Radhesh, welcome to the stage and looking forward to a fantastic session from you.
For next 20 minutes or so, I will be talking about one more marketing terminology which has been cropped in the market for past 1 year or so, which Gartner call as cybersecurity mesh. And in next 20 minutes or so, we will try to decode what exactly that cybersecurity mesh means, why exactly that came into existence, and is it really relevant for me for my business? Or most of you are learned CISOs who are sitting in this particular hall, so they might have also seen that there are many marketing terminologies which came up in past 10, 15 years. Some were really relevant for your businesses, some were just the hypes. So let us try to understand what exactly cybersecurity mesh architecture is all about. So next 20 minutes or so, this is what is going to be the agenda. First, I will try to look at what exactly the today's world looks through your eyes. Because in past 2 years, there are many changes that has happened when it comes to the IT security world. How exactly Fortinet's vision, whether it is matching or is it going in the same direction that you are also walking through. And then we will go into a closer look at cybersecurity mesh architecture also, how exactly it is relevant for your business. If time permits, we can also have a round of question and answer. If you're wondering what that robot is basically Fortinet, because we are those people who get all the market intelligence from all learned people like you, and then we develop our intelligence on the top of it. So let's begin the discussion. So this is what we will first try to understand, or we will try to look at the world through your eyes. So these are the basically 4 trends that are actually at the back of the mind of every CISO. So we are talking about digital acceleration, work from anywhere, application journey, and then evolving threat landscape. I will go into detail of all these things, and basically there is a history, or there is a kind of a timeline by which this whole 4 steps are following through. Now, digital acceleration is not something new, or rather I used to work with an organization, Nortel. In 2005, we used to call it this as something as hyperconnectivity. What exactly hyperconnectivity means? That every individual will have device, and then he will have multiple devices that he will be using. All those devices will come onto the network, and then multiple devices itself, they will start talking to each other. Now, in those days, that much bandwidth was not available, but in today's world, that whole concept has become a reality. You have enough bandwidth, every device can come onto the network, and now we are also looking at devices talking to each other. That's where your IT to OT convergence also has become a reality. Now, from a CISO perspective, you have to rethink or redesign your networks or the infrastructure to address this particular requirement. After digital acceleration, in past 2 years or so, we also have redefined the concept of work. Work is not somewhere you go, work is something that you do. Earlier, work means if I go to office, that means I am working. But now it is not that. I can be anywhere and still I am working. So work from anywhere also has become a new normal in today's world. And that's where, from a CISO perspective, if people are working from anywhere, the attack surface is increasing. I need to still rethink on my previous network architecture or the IT security infrastructure that I have designed. Third thing that has changed, or I would like to take an example here, because during the pandemic days, people started working from home, but the applications were on premise, and applications were actually designed that most of the people will be actually accessing that application from the office infrastructure itself. And when thousands of employees now need access to that application which is at the data center, the bandwidth was something that was the problem. Application was accessible, but my bandwidth was actually not procured in such a fashion that more number of remote workers will be accessing those applications. And in this short period of confusion, most of the IT companies, they started migrating their application towards the cloud, because it was the easiest and fastest way. There was nobody to provision the bandwidth for me in that short period of time. What I can do is, I can just move my application towards the cloud, and from cloud, absolutely no problem of bandwidth, I can still access my application. After moving those applications towards the cloud, there was a nice discussion what exactly the CSP vendors can do for you. CSP vendors now started talking about many possibilities. Instead of designing the application in a traditional way, there are many cloud native functions where you can still design the application in much more efficient way, and it can be much more scalable also. The concept like serverless and all those started coming into picture, and now as an IT organization, people are thinking of it in that application journey. Why can't I move from the traditional way of writing an application to a much more simpler way, which can be secure at the same time, which can be more scalable compared to the traditional approaches. So these are, and when there is a hell lot of confusion out there where you are planning digital acceleration, workforce has moved from on-premises to work from anywhere, applications are moving towards the cloud. There is all kind of confusion that is going on in a particular IT organization. So if there is a confusion in the organization, that's an opportunity for the attackers. That's where attackers are targeting with much more targeted attacks towards your infrastructure. So this is what majorly we at Fortinet find that these are the kind of IT trends most of the CISOs are talking when we are discussing with them. Now the second part is, okay, when you have spoken out your problems, is Fortinet vision matching, or is Fortinet actually doing something to solve those problems? So that's where we will discuss about what exactly is the Fortinet vision, and is it really relevant for the today's IT security infrastructure. So yeah, Fortinet also has done their own survey, and we also find that in past 2 years or so, the attack surface has become more and more perforated. So now your assets can be anywhere, it can be at remote place, it can be an OT infrastructure, it can be in data center, it can be in cloud. Attack surface has increased. And as I mentioned in the previous slide also, that there is all kind of confusion that is going on, because there are many migrations which are happening within the IT infrastructure. That's where you will also see targeted attacks happening on your infrastructure. One thing Fortinet is specifically emphasizing is what we call as weaponization of the AI. So the way your attacker is going to write the attack now is, it will use lot of artificial intelligence to create those attacks to address or to actually cover two things. The first part is, I should be able to do much more impact on the organization at very less time. So I will use artificial intelligence to do this kind of attacks. So if I am using a lot of artificial intelligence, my security controls should be also up to the mark to address those particular problems. Now the question is, are my security controls up to that mark or not? Before moving on to whether the security controls are up to mark or not, the other thing that as an IT organization you will be looking at is the convergence of network and security. Again, this is not a new concept. The day your SSID started asking you for authentication, your network device has actually become a security device. But now in today's infrastructure, that convergence asks for many things. It is just not authentication. It should be some kind of threat intelligence on the top of it. If you don't have threat intelligence on the top of it, there has to be some kind of integration with some other devices from where I can take certain kind of response mechanism and address those threats in much faster way. So the problem for most of the organization is they have still invested in the network infrastructure drastically, which is not security capable. Now, if I immediately want to make them security aware, the only option that lies with me is that network device will talk to something or get integrated with something that is security aware. And that's the whole concept of cyber security mesh. I may have devices on my infrastructure which are not security aware. How do I make them security aware? By using something which is security aware. So I can have a detection mechanism, control mechanism, as well as a response mechanism which is security aware, but I can still do all kind of actions on devices which are not security aware. So this term is something Gartner coined last year, but this is not something new from Fortinet perspective, because Fortinet from year 2017 itself, we are talking about something called a Fortinet Security Fabric. So actually Gartner copied the concept that we were talking about, because the way we are talking about Fortinet Security Fabric is it has to be broad, integrated and automated. When I say broad, it should be able to look at all your touch points which are there on your infrastructure. Integrated, it should not restrict you saying that, okay, I cannot talk to this particular vendor. And the last part is there has to be a lot of automation that can be used to take the incident response in a much faster fashion. So this is the whole story of the security mesh architecture. Now we will come to the last part of it, taking a closer look. This might be all marketing gyan, but actually when it comes to the real world, is it really useful for me? So I am just taking two examples of cyber security mesh, and I will try to show exactly how exactly the mesh starts forming in your infrastructure. There can be many more examples, but for the discussion we will just take two examples. So this is the first part of it. When we are walking the digital acceleration journey, the first thing most of the organizations are doing is the way their WAN infrastructure is, or the networking infrastructure is built up, they want to use it to the optimal. People are moving towards SD-WAN kind of a technology. Now, when you are doing an SD-WAN, you have two choices. I can have a dumb device at the branch level, which is just doing the job of optimal routing, or I can have a security aware device at the branch level, which can even control the IoT devices, or if you have access points or any other devices on that infrastructure. That's what the Fortinet way of designing the WAN infrastructure. But the SD-WAN is just taking care of your branch connecting to the data center. You will still we have the second problem, people want to work from home. If they want to work from home, if I want to enforce the same kind of security policies onto that user, I can redirect that user to something called as a SASE, and from that SASE I can apply the same kind of security policy. Problem, the same remote user, if you want to connect back to the data center, we can use the zero trust network access to form a ZTNA tunnel from the remote infrastructure. Problem with most of the SASE vendor is, or if you want to adapt SASE, is my user infrastructure or the user IDP database is still on premise. My Microsoft AD is still on premise. How do I make sure that I can still have a strong authentication for somebody who is at the remote location? So we can actually provide FortiAuthenticator, which is a strong authentication solution. If you have moved a journey towards the SaaS application, I can reroute the traffic from SASE to an SaaS application. I can still have the same kind of control. I can look at how exactly the links are performing. I can have sandbox as an platform as a service, and also when I'm transiting this whole journey, if anything goes wrong, I can build a very fast incident response using a SOAR mechanism. Do you see that a mesh is forming here? Just for your single problem of digital acceleration or transformation from your network, traditional WAN network to a optimized WAN network. This is what is cybersecurity. Let's move on to the second example. This is much more complex example. This is what we are talking about, web application. Web application is basically, if you want to design a security infrastructure around web application, we are talking about three vectors: user, internal control device, it can be a firewall, IPS, or you can have web signature also on the load balancer, and at the back end you have web application. Now if I want to design a secure infrastructure, the first question most of the people ask is my WAF good enough, or the traditional WAF good enough to address the threats of today's world? The answer is no, because generation 1 WAF is just doing the signature based analysis and working on IP reputation. Generation 2, many features are there. We are talking about machine learning and AI also on the web application firewall. We are talking about advanced bot detection mechanism and also advanced API protection mechanism. So that's how the WAF has transitioned. But most of the time people, when they are selecting a WAF or even when they are configuring a web application firewall, the one thing that is always overlooked is the client side threats. And nowadays attackers are actually not going to target your server side threats. They are actually looking at how exactly I can compromise the client, or how exactly I can do a lot of client side threat analysis. That's where there were certain traditional mechanisms which are already available on WAF, but something that is transitioning drastically is most of the web applications, they were using authentication mechanism on the backend application server. Now people are saying that authentication offload also has to happen on the web application firewall, because that's where you will get much more visibility. If your web application is taking file uploads, it has to go for zero-day analysis. Your WAF has to integrate with sandbox. Now we will talk about the third parameter. On the third vector, we spoke about two vectors, WAF and the end user. Now we will talk about the third vector, that is web application. In past few years, you will see the way the web applications are written, they are moving towards a container-based or a serverless-based approach. And nowadays people are preferring an infrastructure which is provided by cloud providers, which is a container based as well as serverless architecture on the cloud itself. So now if you are moving towards the microservices, and if you want to protect your application code before it goes on to live, and if you want to scan that particular code, you require certain mechanism for your CI/CD pipeline scan. Fortinet can provide that mechanism also. Second problem, if you go for a serverless deployment, where exactly I need to deploy a WAF? Because if I am using a CloudFront distribution of AWS, I don't know where to deploy the WAF. Only option for me is to deploy it as a SaaS offering. Fortinet can provide that, FortiWeb as a cloud offering. If you want to see that whether your WAF is configured properly or not, we can do a penetration testing on top of it. If you want compliance logging, we can do SIM. Compliance logging will log almost everything. If you want to reduce the alert fatigue, and if you want to take some certain automated action, I can add a layer of SOAR on the top of it. Now this whole infrastructure is actually talking about the threats which are actually coming onto your infrastructure. Nowadays, what is actually becoming more popular is where actually traffic is not coming onto your web server. Somebody is misusing your brand. He has created a lookalike website or a lookalike application on the Play Store or Marketplace where people can download, and now they are actually trying to compromise the user. we can also provide a protection for this kind of threats. Same question. Single problem, application security. Do you see a mesh forming out there? This is what exactly the whole concept of cybersecurity mesh architecture. I have taken only 2 problems, but Fortinet, we have designed multiple architecture across multiple such problems where cybersecurity meshes can help you. I would like to end this discussion saying that, believe it or not, the mesh is approaching you. And that's where Fortinet can be your trusted security partners in building that mesh architecture. So I am around, so if you have any questions regarding this presentation, I'll be happy to take those questions.
Radhesh, if you could kindly also join us for the felicitation. Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, that was Decoding CyberSecurity Mesh, Relevance for Today's Businesses by Radhesh. Thank you so much, Radhesh, for that wonderful presentation. And I would now like to call on stage Melvin Ribeiro, CISO from Aeon Credit Service India Private Limited, to kindly do the honors. Melvin, thank you so much for taking time to do the honors. Thank you so much, Radhesh, for that wonderful presentation. Very interesting subject and topic. And let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, Radhesh and the whole team of Fortinet is available throughout the day. Please do engage with them, and they would be more than happy to let you know about their solutions and products and to solve your queries and unique questions as well.